Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Chapter 21 Exaggerated Growth X Hisoka. Luo Lin silently looked at the 8 bundled logs behind him. Just now, he lifted the 8 logs that were tied together by strength alone. Although Luo Lin had never calculated the weight of a log, Luo Lin clearly remembered that 3 days ago, with all his strength, he could only lift 3 logs. In other words, after 3 days of training, Luo Lin's strength almost tripled. That's right. The reason why Luo Lin remained silent was because he was surprised by the speed at which his strength grew. Although Luo Lin has known for a long time that people in this world can easily develop extremely terrifying strength if they exercise with firm beliefs and a little talent. But in 3 days, his strength doubled. Isn't it a little outrageous? You know, these 3 days he just did some strength training that he could think of, and he didn't even have any other suitable exercise tools except for the log over there. And in terms of nutritional supplements, there are only some prey caught from the forest or seafood caught in the sea. But that's it, all with such amazing results. This is not scientific at all. But this is very nen. The energy source that doubles the power is probably life energy. Luo Lin thought for a while, and he thought of a possible answer. Of course, this life energy is not the life force in his attributes, but the extraordinary power of the hunter world. At the same time, the life energy that can be manipulated freely has another name, nen. In the hunter world, the aura nodes are turned on, and those who can freely manipulate their own life energy are nen. Those who have not opened aura nodes are common people. Of course, it is said to be common people, but in fact it is not the same concept as the common people in Luo Lin's previous life. Because of the existence of life energy, even the common people will emit very weak life energy every moment. Although this part of life energy cannot be freely manipulated by common people, life energy itself is easily influenced by one's own firm beliefs and manipulated by one's own spirit. Therefore, as long as people with good aptitude in this world exercise with firm beliefs, they can mobilize this part of life energy to a certain extent, and exercise their physical fitness to a terrifying level. This is not Luo Lin's nonsense. This is also reflected in the plot. In the Zoldyck family chapter, the guards of the Zoldyck family spoke to Gon, Liurio and Kurapika. Young people like them can push through the door of the Zoldyck family's trials as long as they go through a month of training with them. In fact, after only 2 weeks, the 3 successfully pushed through the door of the Zoldyck family's 2-ton trial. Even Liurio almost opened the door of the second 4-ton trial. It's not that Luo Lin has never paid attention to the strength of the 3 of them. Although it is impossible to estimate the exact figure, the strength of the 3 of them is probably around 200 to 300 kilograms. If you look at the multiplier alone, after 2 weeks of training, the strength of the 3 of them has directly increased by more than 10 times, which is greater than Luo Lin's current improvement. Of course, the training time, environment, and base are all different, so it's not just such a comparison method. However, after thinking about this, Luo Lin didn't care much about the growth rate of his own strength. He was just a little genius, no. And compared to that kind of thing, Luo Lin valued his own system panel more. Open black lens bracket 100 level ascension system close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket name, Luo Lin close black lens bracket. Level 1 181 thousandths. Vitality 1. Open black lens bracket spiritual power 1 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket world, Hunter x Hunter close black lens bracket. 3 days. Luo Lin gained a full 70 experience points from strength training. Although it is not as efficient as the trap tower that gained 90 experience points in 3 days, it has not decreased much, which is a small surprise. What pleased Luo Lin the most was that even though his strength had tripled, his attribute points remained unchanged. This also preliminarily proves that Luo Lin's previous guess is correct. Attribute points. No, it should be said that his system is stronger than he imagined. 100-level godhood system. Luo Lin looked at the name of the system, and he felt that as long as he had 1 or 20 levels, he could be called a god. And level 100, Luo Lin couldn't even imagine what he would become. Luo Lin felt a little emotional in his heart. Looking at the nearby training place where he lived for 3 days, he hesitated a little. Still chose to leave. Although the efficiency of gaining experience here is not too low, and it can also exercise strength, Luo Lin is still preparing to gain experience for the time being, with upgrading as the first prerequisite. In terms of strength, His current strength is enough for the time being, and if he continues to practice, he will not be able to beat Hisoka and Ilfans disguised as Gitarakor. Except for these two, no other hunter candidates are his opponents. And once you pass the hunter test, the Hunter Association will arrange Nen teacher to teach Nen. After learning Nen, under the premise of actively manipulating the nourishment of life energy, strength, it should be said that physical fitness will usher in a real leap forward improvement. After making a decision, Luo Lin did not hesitate. Picking among the training props I had these days, I chose a log that looked pleasing to the eye and tied it up, and tied the other end to myself. Run with a heavy load. This is what Luo Lin has noticed recently. Even long-distance running training with a certain degree of weight can increase the efficiency of gaining experience. If you pull this log, Luo Lin can gain a little experience by running about 6 kilometers, which is why Luo Lin's efficiency in gaining experience has not dropped too much these days. However, if you carry too much weight, the physical exertion will be too great, and it will also affect the speed, so that the loss outweighs the gain. A log weighed just about right, and the island wasn't all that safe. Putting the log vertically, Luo Lin pulled the log and began to trot. Because his strength has doubled in the past few days, even with a log behind him, Luo Lin can run no slower than before. It can even walk through the forest flexibly without being affected. But in terms of movement and stillness, Luo Lin really couldn't help it. After all, there was such a log behind him. Previously, Luo Lin practiced at the edge of the island. Although there was a lot of movement, the candidates were not noticed because of the remoteness. But now, Luo Lin dragged a log into the forest. I'm afraid Luo Lin will be discovered directly after a long distance. Certainly, candidates who already have enough points may run away when they hear the noise, but those who haven't collected all the points may rush over excitedly. Luo Lin thought casually in his heart. And it turns out, Luo Lin was right. Luo Lin had just entered the forest less than 10 minutes later. A hunter candidate popped out of the grass by the side of the road, stabbing at Luo Lin with a long sword in his hand. Go to hell, the man yelled, and rushed out of the grass in Luo Lin's corner, aiming directly at Luo Lin's head. Out of the corner of Luo Lin's eyes, he could even see the surprise and mockery in the man's eyes. It's like saying, "Who made you make such a big fuss, idiot?" In fact, that person really thought so, and he noticed Luo Lin's movement from a distance, especially Luo Lin was still wearing a number plate on his chest. Of course he will prepare an ambush ahead of time and make a move. Only, Luo Lin looked at the man out of the corner of his eye, with a calm expression and no surprise. He didn't even have any intention to untie the log behind him. His feet moved quietly, and he directly avoided the man's sword strike, and his palm landed on the back of the opponent's neck. Although he doesn't really want to kill, but since the other party is merciless, Luo Lin will naturally not hold back. And, pulling out the number plate from the other party, Luo Lin continued to move forward indifferently. After ambushing, he jumped out and shouted, "How did this kind of idiot get to this level? But the first time I killed someone, it didn't seem as uncomfortable as I imagined. Is it also because of the strong mental power?" Luo Lin thought casually. Sudden. This is. Luo Lin's expression tightened, and he suddenly turned around to look to the side of his body, and at the same time directly cut off the rattan that tied the log around his body. Then, Luo Lin saw a perverted figure sprinting towards him in the distance, and his face changed suddenly. Hisoka. Chapter 22. So sad. Those two people have completely aroused my desire to kill. Hisoka licked the corner of his mouth, thinking of the two people he had just met. Kurapika and Lirio. They are completely different types, but each one is so good that he wants to kill. Ah, no, you have to be patient. The young apple is not ripe yet. Hisoka moaned in a low voice, forcing himself to suppress the idea of shooting immediately. But he also needs to find someone to vent to. Hisoka looked towards the direction where there was constant movement in the distance, and the smile on his face gradually became abnormal. The next moment, Hisoka sprinted quickly. And in the jungle far away from Hisoka, a figure also followed Hisoka's movements quickly. Hisoka can't help it anymore. Even if the next enemy doesn't resist at all, Hisoka will definitely not stop. Gon stared at Hisoka. And next, it's a good opportunity to make a shot. Gon looked at the movement in the distance, and stepped forward quickly. He should arrive in the ambush before Hisoka, waiting for the right time to make a shot. Only. Luo Lin. Gon's face changed, looking at the figure in the distance. He never thought that after Hisoka just met Lirio and Kurapika, Luo Lin would appear next. There are so many candidates on the island, why do they meet people he knows again and again? No, it's too late to remind Luo Lin to let him escape. Gon looked at Hisoka who was sprinting not far away, and Luo Lin who had already spotted Hisoka narrowed his eyes. The only way now is to divert Hisoka's attention as much as possible. Gon knew very well that even if he jumped out with his own strength, nothing could be changed. So, I must not make any mistakes next. Gon clenched the fishing rod in his hand, took deep breaths one after another, and tried to force himself to calm down. Here we come. Gon's eyes suddenly focused, and he looked at Luo Lin and Hisoka who were about to collide not far away, and threw the fishing rod in his hand. Hisoka. Luo Lin's face changed, and he looked at Hisoka who was rushing towards him from a distance with his murderous desire written all over his face. Although he knew he was making a lot of noise, he couldn't attract Hisoka anyway. And Hisoka looks like this now. It's this time. Luo Lin remembered that in this hunter test, Hisoka had a strong desire to kill, and the candidate who was killed at that time. Luo Lin. It seems to be the hunter candidate he just killed. Luo Lin's pupils froze suddenly. There is no other way, can I just force it? Luo Lin's eyes froze suddenly. As long as Hisoka's attack starts, with Hisoka's personality, he shouldn't die. And if the plot doesn't go wrong, he only needs to survive one attack. Without the slightest hesitation, Luo Lin immediately discarded all distracting thoughts in his mind, and became highly concentrated. Next, he couldn't tolerate the slightest carelessness. And just as Luo Lin was getting ready, Hisoka had already rushed in front of Luo Lin. Of course, he has already recognized that Luo Lin is also his favorite little apple, but at this time, he couldn't bear it anymore. Besides, he's found enough good toys this time around for the hunter exam that it wouldn't be a problem to try one or two in advance. However, since it is a small apple that has been favored for a long time, it is natural not to kill it directly, it is better to taste it slowly. Hisoka licked the corner of his mouth, fixed his eyes on Luo Lin, a poker card appeared in his hand, with a perverted smile on his face, and swiped the poker card towards Luo Lin directly. However, a fishing hook that appeared suddenly made Hisoka's murderous expression stagnate, and the next moment, the number plate on his chest was directly hooked away by the hook. And Luo Lin's unbelievably fast movement also directly dodged the attack of Leng Shenxi, and the attack fell directly on him like a storm. It doesn't feel right. Luo Lin's eyes froze suddenly, and he chose to retreat without the slightest hesitation, dodging far away. And seeing Hisoka who no longer had the perverted killing intent before, Luo Lin knew that this time the crisis was over. Without hesitation, Luo Lin retreated directly into the forest. 1 second. Just for a second, he changed from the original hunter to the prey, and he became the prey of two people at the same time. It's really. Hisoka looked at Gon who caught his number plate in the distance, then turned and ran away, and Luo Lin who was about to taste it in advance but counterattacked him fiercely. It's so wonderful. Hisoka's whole body instantly climaxed, his face full of fascination. Even Anne's unbearable desire to kill just now is nothing now. Perfect. Two perfect little apples appeared in front of him at the same time. Hisoka just feels that the decision to fail the hunter test last year was simply right. In the forest, Luo Lin walked quickly, and at the same time began to reflect on himself. Is it because he knows the plot and the system is disabled, so he is a little bit drifting? Like, it really is. Luo Lin slapped himself on the face fiercely. You can't be too arrogant, your current strength is not enough to be arrogant, Luo Lin. But, just now, just read it. Luo Lin recalled the feeling when he attacked Hisoka just now. With his current strength and that instant burst, even if Hisoka can't be hurt, Hisoka shouldn't be unscathed after a dozen punches in a row. So, the only possibility is that at that moment, although Hisoka was stunned, he protected his body with thoughts. You know, even a novice to Nen like Zuchi, after using Nen to protect the body, Killua's power can hardly really hurt the opponent, let alone a Nen master like Hisoka. Only this kind of possibility can make Hisoka unscathed after taking a dozen punches from Luo Lin in a dazed state. Although I have known it for a long time, but after experiencing it personally, I still feel that the gap between Nen people and non-Nen people is really ridiculous. Luo Lin couldn't help but feel emotional. If there is no Nen, even with Hisoka's physical fitness, he would have no small chance to kill Hisoka at that moment. But because of the existence of Nen, this possibility has almost become zero. I haven't chased him yet, are you chasing Gon? Luo Lin saw that there was no movement of Hisoka behind him, and gradually stopped. If the plot is correct, then Gon may need some help. Although he doesn't plan to join the protagonist group, just now Gon can also say that he helped him in a disguised form. Let's take a look. Luo Lin thought for a while, then carefully returned in that direction. Chapter 23. Really? Luo Lin looked at the jungle not far away. The Gon who was lying on the ground, looked at the 2 number plates thrown beside Gon, and the obvious injury on Gon's face from being punched. Just like in the plot, after successfully attacking Hisoka, he was attacked by someone again, and his life was saved by Hisoka in turn. Luo Lin thought to himself, probably Hisoka also chose to come to Gon after he found out that Gon was being followed. After all, there is obviously nothing to worry about with Luo Lin's display of strength, but Gon, a green and immature apple, will be destroyed if he doesn't pay attention. The name of the fruit farmer is worthy of the name. Luo Lin felt emotional, then picked up the 2 number plates on the ground, picked up Gon, and left quickly. Night fell. Wow. Gon slowly opened his eyes, still a little bit confused, and in a blink of an eye, he saw Luo Lin not far away who was holding a big uncle in one hand and kept moving up and down. Luo Lin. Gon subconsciously called out, "You're awake." Luo Lin glanced casually at Gon who had woken up and said, "Is there anything else wrong?" I'm fine." Gon sat up and shook his head, looking at the number plates 403 and 44 in his hand, looking a little depressed. Apparently, he had recalled what had happened during the day. Luo Lin looked at Gon's movements out of the corner of his eyes. Although he just shook his head, judging from his actions, the effects of the anesthetic on Gon's body should have completely passed. You won against Hisoka, but you were attacked by other people, and Hisoka saved your life in the end. You are not reconciled, Luo Lin Yi said casually while exercising. Gon responded in a low voice, "Did you see Luo Lin?" "I didn't see it, but I guessed it. It's not because of the injury on your face that you fell into a coma. Hisoka doesn't have the habit of using anesthesia-type drugs," Luo Lin said casually. Of course he wouldn't say that he saw it in the plot. However, even if there is no plot, just seeing the scene where Gon fell to the ground is enough to make a guess. I'm really not reconciled. Gon sat on the ground, buried his head in his lap and sobbed softly. Luo Lin stared blankly. This is just crying. Sure enough, he was still a child. Luo Lin glanced at Gon and shook his head, then turned around and continued to practice holding 2 big trees. Under the moonlight, Luo Lin held a big tree with one hand, and kept changing her movements back and forth, raising her hands forward, her hands sideways, and her hands flat in front. Are you not reconciled? Not reconciled. How could Gon be the only one? Early the next morning, Luo Lin and Gon separated. After all, he hasn't collected all the points yet, and Gon is also going to find Lirio, Kurapika, and Kahlua. In the forest, Luo Lin learned his lesson this time. Even if he knew that he met Hisoka, the other party probably would not do anything again, and he did not drag a log behind him. Found it. Luo Lin's steps suddenly stopped, and he looked towards a forest clearing in the distance. Although it seemed that there was no one there and it was very peaceful, Luo Lin's keen 5 senses could clearly detect where someone was hiding. I got the last point. Luo Lin looked at a certain big tree in the open space, and suddenly rushed towards it. He found me. In the dense tree canopy, Bao Kuer's pupils shrank suddenly, and without the slightest hesitation, he directly drew out the short bow next to him. Su. In the blink of an eye, 3 arrows shot out in succession. Although it was just an arrow shot from a short bow, it was obviously made of special materials. Combined with the explosion of hundreds of kilograms of power from Shangbankuer, the speed of the arrow was extremely fast. The arrows tore through the air and galloped towards Luo Lin in all directions. Bow and arrow. There was a little surprise in Luo Lin's eyes. He remembered that among the remaining hunter candidates who used bows and arrows as weapons, only number 53 Baokuer remained. And number 53 was his hunting target. What a coincidence, Luo Lin thought to himself, but with a few light sidesteps, he dodged from the side of the 3 arrows, and kept rushing towards the big tree where Kuer was hiding. What a quick move. Bao Kuer's face changed slightly. In that forward state, he avoided the 3 arrows he was hiding in the bushes. It's over if you get close. Bao Kuer had this kind of understanding in an instant, and she didn't dare to delay at all. She drew her bow one after another, and shot each arrow with Luo Lin in mind. But it's a pity. Although the speed of the arrow was fast, it was far from reaching the limit of Luo Lin's current eyesight, and as long as he could see it, with his control over his body, the arrow would never hit him. Even if he has come within 3 meters of the big tree. 3 meters. Luo Lin spanned a distance of 3 meters in just one burst, and appeared on the tree in an instant. Then Luo Lin tilted his head slightly, and directly dodged an arrow aimed at his head. Oh, Luo Lin was a little surprised. He didn't expect that Kuer, who was so fast just now, could still aim at him. However, this is also the last arrow that Bao Kuer can shoot. Wait for me. Bao Kuer's expression changed, and he shouted at Luo Lin, who suddenly burst out at a terrifying speed. However, Luo Lin's palm had already slapped Bao Kuer. Bao Kuer only had time to subconsciously block the bow and arrow in front of him. The next moment, there was a crisp cracking sound. I just don't know whether the sound came from the broken bow in Bao Kuer's hand, or the broken rib of the other party. Bao Kuer was slapped out by Luo Lin's palm, and landed heavily on another tree behind. Me. Bao Kuer's expression was unwilling. At the last moment just now, he actually wanted to admit defeat and voluntarily handed over his number plate. After all, it's only the 4th day now. Even if the number plate is gone, he can go hunting again, but his current injuries can't die, but he will definitely not be able to hunt in the next few days. Frightened by Luo Lin's sudden burst of speed, Bao Kuer missed the arrow and shot the last arrow. However, the reason no longer matters. Luo Lin walked towards Bao Kuer, and found 2 number plates from the other party, one of which was number 53 Bao Kuer's own, and the other should be Bao Kuer's hunting target. Originally, he only wanted 1 point, but in the end he got 4 points directly. Counting the previous 2 points, he now has 9 points. Tisk tisk, this is enough to help another person who still has his own number plate pass the test. Instead of making up for the seriously injured Bao Kuer, Luo Lin took the number plate and walked directly to the place where he was exercising. Next 3 days, he's about to explode with all his strength. On the way back, Luo Lin suddenly reacted. He seems to eliminated Bao Kuer. And Bao Kuer seems to be the first Nen person caught by ants in the ant chapter. At the same time, the ant also found the knowledge of Nen in Bao Kuer's mind. Of course, he didn't think that without the Bao Kuer ants, he would not be able to learn Nen. You must know that Wang's 3 guards were born with Nen who naturally opened aura nodes. So, am I saving that guy's life? Luo Lin thought casually with his chin propped up. Chapter 24. The 4th test of the Hunter test is now officially over. Please return to the starting point as soon as possible. From now on, all candidates have 1 hour to return to the starting point, and all candidates who have not returned by the time will be considered unqualified. And, after arriving at the starting point, the transfer of the number plate will be invalid. Once found out, the qualification will be lost immediately. Please pay attention. The 4th test of the Hunter test is now officially over. Candidates please. On the surface of the sea, the loudspeaker on the ship of the Hunter Association kept shouting the news that the exam was over. The sound was loud enough for all candidates on the entire island to hear clearly. All over the island, the examinees who had already collected their scores showed smiles and returned to the assembly point one after another. As for the candidates who did not get enough points, or even had their number plates taken away, they were full of dissatisfaction. Some candidates even had the guts to prepare an ambush ahead of time to rob. Only, the strength of this group of people is obviously not enough to threaten anyone with enough number plates. Luo Lin casually threw away the candidate who wanted to sneak attack, and continued walking towards the assembly point. Because the location is relatively remote, when he returned to the assembly point, many people were already waiting here. Kahlua, Hisoka, Gitarakor, Hanzo, and an unknown martial artist. Candidate number 406, please show your number plate. On the boat, the female guide who sent them over said. Luo Lin took out his number plate and showed it, and the number plate worth 9 cents attracted the attention of several candidates. Okay, Mr. Luo Lin's score is qualified. The female guide of the Hunter Association finished recording. Yo, Luo Lin, why did you snatch so many number plates? Kaluo walked over and said with a smile. When I was grabbing the third number plate, I happened to meet my prey, and the prey had extra number plates. You want to ask me if I've met Gon? Luo Lin explained casually, then looked at Kaluo and said. Hey. Kaluo scratched his head and said with a smile, because Gon's prey is very worrying. Hisoka. Luo Lin couldn't help but glanced at Hisoka in the crowd, and then said to Kaluo, don't worry, Gon is fine, and Hisoka's number plate has also been obtained, and he should be rushing this way now. Really? Gon grabbed Hisoka's number plate. Kaluo's eyes widened suddenly, his face full of disbelief. He came a little later than Hisoka, so he didn't see the scene of Hisoka showing his number plate, but no matter what he thought, he didn't think Gon could beat Hisoka. You can ask the specific reason when Gon comes. Luo Lin said. Kaluo didn't ask any further, obviously, for hearing from Luo Lin, he was more like hearing Gon tell him in person. Time passed by every minute and every second, seeing that an hour is about to arrive. In the forest, Gon, Lirio, and Kurapika repeated the feat of the third test and passed the line. On the airship of the Hunter Association. Okay, the dishes are ready, everyone, don't hesitate to eat. Menchi brought her elaborate dishes to the table with a bold expression on her face. At the dining table, Netaro, the president of the Hunter Association, and the examiners of the previous Hunter tests were all sitting here. Oh ho ho ho, I've been looking forward to Xiaomenchi's craftsmanship for a long time, Netaro said. Several other Hunter examiners expected the same. Although they are both hunters, as a one-star gourmet hunter, Menchi's craftsmanship is not something that can be eaten casually. On the table, everyone chatted while eating. By the way, among the remaining 9 candidates, 7 are newcomers. It's really surprising, Lieber said with emotion. Oh ho ho ho, yes, this year is another bumper year. Netaro said with a smile. Again, President, has this happened before? Buhachi asked curiously. Of course there have been. Netaro stroked his beard and smiled. Probably 10 years in a row without a newcomer passing the qualifications, and then suddenly a large group of promising young people appeared. This is the 4th time this has happened during my tenure as president. Netaro said with a smile. Several examiners present were a little surprised. They did not expect such a strange rule to exist in the Hunter test. But, at this time, Menchi seemed to have discovered a blind spot, and she turned sideways and approached the Domian man and asked in a low voice, Hey, how old is the president this year? Domian was taken aback, but there was nothing to hide about this kind of thing, so he replied in a low voice, 20 years ago, the president was almost 100 years old. That's at least 120 years old. Hearing Domian's answer, Menchi turned to look at Netaro in front of everyone. She originally wanted to ask the secret of longevity, but when she saw the creases on Netaro's face, she silently took it back. What's so good about living a long time, but you can't stay young forever? Speaking of which, what is the president's final test? Satats asked softly. Ah yes, President, we don't know the content of the last test yet. Buhachi also looked at Netaro and said. In the final analysis, how many rookies can pass the Hunter test in the end, we have to watch the last game. Menchi said. The content of the last test. A smile appeared on the corner of Netaro's mouth. I plan to have a special battle, but before the last test, I want to chat with 9 of them. Especially, that kid, Netaro said, as if thinking of something interesting, the corner of his mouth revealed a playful look. Seeing Netaro's unfathomable smile, the corners of their mouths twitched suddenly. This old man, he thought of another bad idea. Chapter 25. Come and sit. Netaro was sitting cross-legged in the reception room, holding a notebook in his hand and writing and drawing. When he saw Luo Lin coming in, he said directly. Luo Lin was also polite, and directly stepped forward and sat down cross-legged. He is still very clear about the interview process this time, and he has already thought about the answers to Netaro's questions. However, well, you are not from this world, Netaro said suddenly. Ah, ha, Luo Lin Yi looked at Netaro in a daze. What the hell, sure enough, Netaro put down the notebook in his hand, stroked his beard with a smile and said, you really are not from our world. Luo Lin, did he just Speak. He's not. Huh, well. What a nuisance to the smart people of this world. Oh ho ho ho, what's the old man doing looking at me like that? Netero laughed and said, appeared out of thin air in my Hunter Association's test, and still can't find out the slightest identity. You don't think you are hiding very well, do you? Luo Lin was speechless. It's not that he didn't think about the problems caused by his lack of identity, but because there are places like Meteor Street in this world, Luo Lin didn't worry too much. At worst, he'll just pretend to be someone from Meteor Street. By the way, don't think about pretending to be someone from Meteor Street. You don't have the temperament of someone who grew up on Meteor Street. Netero said with a smile. Luo Lin. He hasn't spoken yet. The temperament of Meteor Street people. Luo Lin doesn't think that the old man Netero will lie to him again. One side nourishes one side with water and soil, and the environment does affect a person's temperament, and even affects people's thinking, and the clues can be seen in every move. By the way, don't say that you came from there, old man. I have been there, and some things can't be hidden from the old man's eyes. Netero said with a smile again. Luo Lin. There, Dark Continent. He was not prepared to say that he came from the Dark Continent at all. After all, because a certain old thief, his understanding of the Dark Continent may not be as clear as those at the top of the world. Okay. Luo Lin looked at Netero speechlessly, and was frantically thinking about what to say and what to say next. Oh ho ho, I know the existence of the Dark Continent, but don't you know the Dark Continent? Netero observed Luo Lin's expression and reaction, and gradually came to a conclusion in his mind. This kid is really interesting. Netero laughed heartily. To be honest, he had a lot of gambling this time. After all, although Luo Lin's origin is mysterious, in fact, it is not only the identity of a visitor from outside the world that can explain it. Although the channels of the Hunter Association are very powerful, through V5, traces of almost any person in the world can be found. But just like Meteor Street, there are always places in this world that can't be found through V5 channels. There are also places that are isolated from the world and almost never interact with human society. Only, Luo Lin himself revealed too many flaws. The pajamas and slippers, which are obviously industrial goods, show that Luo Lin does not live in isolation. The same pajamas and slippers, this outfit, it is obvious that Luo Lin's sudden appearance in the Hunter test is not the other party's own will. After that, Luo Lin integrated into the Hunter test without any violation, and some details revealed in the middle showed that Luo Lin had a certain understanding of the Hunter test. In addition, the old heart of Netero people has never been old, and they have been keeping up with the trend of the times. He is familiar with the concept of parallel universes and different worlds. He even has deep insights into the time-traveling novels that have only recently begun to develop on the internet. Of course, the most important thing is Luo Lin's youthful heart in the Hunter test, which made Netero feel like he could take advantage of it. So Netero took a gamble. After all, he has nothing to lose if he loses the bet. If you lose the bet, you are an old man who is old and confused. But it turns out, he won the bet. Netero looked at Luo Lin with a smile, not paying attention to Luo Lin's look of trying to make excuses. After all, even if it is a lie, it will actually reveal some useful information. Young. Still too young. Luo Lin was filled with grief and indignation. Although he was surprised by Netero at first, he is not stupid. Even because of a little mental strength, his brain is much more flexible than before. Soon, he figured out that Netero was scamming him. Pity. Although he didn't say anything, his reaction revealed a lot. Just looking at the old man's smiling face, Luo Lin could imagine how happy the old man was. But what annoyed Luo Lin the most was that the old man had nothing useful to say from the beginning to the end, so he cheated him out. This bad old man is very bad. From the very beginning, although Luo Lin was speechlessly shocked by Netero's series of words, in fact, there was no dry substance at all. Even the Dark Continent is explained by which place. For those who don't know the Dark Continent, they probably don't even know what Netero is talking about. And what he's doing now. 1. He pretended to be crazy and stupid, saying that he didn't know what Netero was talking about. Anyway, he just reacted before, and didn't really reveal anything. 2. Simply admit it, but what to say after admitting it is his business, whether it is a random fabrication or a hidden 9 is up to him. It was impossible for him to tell the truth. The key now is which choice is more beneficial to him. As for the exposure of the identity of the time traveler, Luo Lin is not afraid. Anyway, he still has a chance to time travel. As long as Netero doesn't kill him directly, he can leave whenever he wants. At this time, every move of Luo Lin was also watched by Netero. It seems that this kid still has a whole card. Is it some kind of special power? Or is he able to leave this world at any time? Netero kept thinking. Although Luo Lin deliberately maintained a poker face to avoid being seen through by Netero. But for Netero, who is more than 100 years old, Luo Lin's expression management ability is too immature. After pondering for a long time, Luo Lin finally made up his mind and looked at Netero. President Netero, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Chapter 26. President Netero, are these questions the content of the Hunter test interview? Luo Lin Yi looked at Netero calmly and said. Of course not. Netero smiled and said with his beard curled up, this is just my old man's whimsy and a little curiosity. A little bit of curiosity, I think it's a little bit of curiosity. Luo Lin looked at the old man in front of him. As a not very loyal Hunter fan, I'm a fan when it's updated, I'm not a fan when it's broken. Luo Lin's general character towards Netero is still very clear. The president of the Hunter Association. How could it not be Hunter? And Hunter is the group of people in this world who are most curious and eager for the unknown. But, Luo Lin thought of another identity of Netero. Netero, have you ever been defeated? No. President Netero, do you want a hearty battle? Luo Lin Yi said to Netero seriously. Hearing this, a gleam appeared in Netero's eyes, but it was fleeting. Netero laughed and said, it looks like you know me well. A little bit. Luo Lin shook his head slightly. Luo Lin is serious about this point. Although Netero's character is shown in the Hunter comics, the real world, the real human nature, especially the little words and pictures can all be shown. Netero didn't speak, but looked at Luo Lin with a serious face, was silent for a while, and then slowly said, can I talk to the old man? Of course Luo Lin understood what Netero was asking, nodded lightly and said, it's a monster from over there, and learned Nen after absorbing human DNA. The tyrannical non-human body, and the powerful Nen, that is an opponent that you can't defeat even after trying your best. Luo Lin didn't tell the whole story about the ants. Presumably Netero doesn't like to know the future directly. He just briefly described it. Although Luo Lin said it was simple, he also revealed a lot of information. With just a little thought, Netero could think of many things. I tried my best, but there is no opponent I can defeat. That's really worth looking forward to. Netero stroked his beard and chuckled, and the fighting spirit flashed in his eyes. In that case, the old man is waiting. Netero nodded with a smile, then picked up the pen and paper on the table again, and asked with a straight face. Candidate Luo Lin, why do you want to become a hunter? Netero's sudden turn caught Luo Lin a little off guard, but looking at the old man in front of him with a little smirk, Luo Lin knew it too. The agreement between them was reached. Slightly relieved, Luo Lin also began to prepare to answer Netero's question. I'm not particularly a hunter. I just participated in the hunter test with a playful mentality at the beginning. As for now, Luo Lin pondered for a while before saying, probably becoming a hunter is the easiest way to see higher scenery. And the hunter license is handy too. At the end, Luo Lin added another sentence. Is that so? Netero nodded without commenting, writing and drawing on the notebook in front of him and continued to ask. Then besides you, who do you think is the most outstanding candidate? Number 99 Kahlua. Luo Lin thought for a moment and said. Although Gon is the protagonist of Hunter and Kurapika is the protagonist of the second part of Hunter, he still prefers Kahlua. And besides Hisoka and the disguised ill fans, Kahlua is indeed the strongest in this Hunter test. That's it. The last question, who do you want to fight the last? Netero asked. Hisoka on the 44th, and Gitarakor on the 301st. I can't handle these two people at the moment. Luo Lin said. Okay, you can go out now. Netero stared at the notebook in his hand seriously, without even looking at Luo Lin. And Luo Lin didn't say anything, turned and left the reception room. After Luo Lin left, in the reception room, Netero stopped what he was doing and looked out the door with a rare hesitation on his face. After a long time, he sighed. It's such a headache. People outside the world seem to know a lot about this world. Netero scratched his head with a distressed expression. To be honest, if it was decades ago, when he was still young, he would have been excited to find out the truth when he heard the news. But now that he's older, Netero can't make that kind of decision anymore. After all, there may be another world with human civilization. This matter is too important, big enough to affect the future situation of the entire world, whether it is peace or war. Now the crux of the matter is, did the other party discover the way to this world, or some kind of chance or ability let him come to this world? There was a thoughtful look in Netero's eyes. To be honest, Netero thinks it's the second type, it's just, he can't afford such a big bet. But prepare ahead. Netero also didn't think it was a suitable choice. Preparing in advance will inevitably leave traces. Even as the president of the Hunter Association, Netero can't guarantee that his preparations will not be discovered. And once discovered, in the subsequent development, Netero can imagine what will happen with his ass. After all, Netero has a life of more than 100 years, but he understands human beings very well. It's really troublesome. If I knew it, I pretended not to know it. Netero scratched his scalp, and gradually had an idea in his mind. Leave it to her. After that, the old man and I, who are about to go to the ground, don't care about it. Having made a decision, Netero returned to his previous smiling appearance, but the flash of fighting spirit when he looked at the door of the reception room from time to time showed that the old man had not completely calmed down. Only, whether this fighting spirit is aimed at the opponent that Luo Lin said before can make Netero fight heartily, then maybe. Chapter 27. What a hassle. Walking out of the reception room, Luo Lin also sighed directly. He didn't expect that it would be so troublesome just for an interview with the Hunter Association. Even the identity of the Traverser has been discovered. But this is also something that can't be helped. After all, it's his first time traveling and he has little experience. And the first world is still Hunter x Hunter. Not to mention the per capita IQ of the big bosses, but also because of the existence of the Dark Continent, the V5 of this world has an outrageous control over the intelligence information in the world. It didn't take long to confirm that Luo Lin had left no trace anywhere in the world. Immediately afterwards, I met Netero, the president of the Hunter Association, with a high position, rich life experience, eccentric personality, daring to make bold assumptions, and extremely cunning personality. This made him just jump a little bit, and he was checked out after being a little eye-catching. It wasn't an obvious flaw after time travel, but the other party directly picked up all of it. Fortunately, Luo Lin's system once again had a traversing opportunity to cover the bottom, which gave Luo Lin a little bit of confidence in front of Netero. While keeping the underpants, you can also bargain for a wave. The old man doesn't know what bad idea he will have in the future. Luo Lin only felt a headache. Although a certain tacit understanding has been reached with Netero, who knows if the old man will regret it later. In this kind of thing, no matter what outrageous decision the old man made, it is not surprising. It's still not strong enough. Luo Lin sighed slightly. Needless to say, if he crossed over at level 10 or 20, let alone his identity was discovered by Netero, even if he was discovered by the V5 of this world, so what? All the troubles in this world are caused by one's own lack of strength. But alas, this was his first time traveling, and his level was only a pitiful one. And even at this level of potential, he doesn't seem to have fully realized it. Now, Luo Lin only hoped that the old man would be attracted by the fact that he said that there would be an opponent who could fight heartily in the future. After all, it's the old man's goal in life, so he should be able to delay it for a while. Luo Lin didn't expect the other party to ignore him, as if he had forgotten about it. Luo Lin only hopes to have a little chance, at least let him have a chance and have time to learn the Nen of this world. Otherwise, Luo Lin would be very unwilling to leave this world like this. Returning to the room prepared by the Hunter Association on the airship, Luo Lin put aside distracting thoughts, stopped thinking about what was there, and started exercising intently. Anyway, it depends on Netero's reaction. Anyway, at worst, he will leave this world. It has nothing to do with him what will happen here. The next few days were uneventful. Even Luo Lin and Netero have never met each other, and someday the conversation between Luo Lin and Netero will be as if it never happened. 3 days later, after flying in the sky for 3 days, the Hunter Association airship finally arrived at the final venue of the Hunter test. luxury hotel run by the Hunter Board of Review. The Hunter Association directly chartered the venue and used this hotel as the venue for the final test until the Hunter test finally ended. An empty lobby of the hotel. Candidates waiting for the test, the examiners of the previous tests, and the staff of the Hunter Review Committee such as Netero all gathered here. Everyone, this is the venue for the final test, and the content of the final test will be a one-on-one duel. As for the groups, Netero stood in front of a whiteboard, turned around with a smile, and tore off the white cloth on the whiteboard. On the whiteboard were the photos and candidate numbers of the 9 candidates. The 9 were roughly divided into 2 groups, with 5 on one side and 4 on the other. And seeing the grouping moment, Luo Lin frowned immediately. Because Group A's gone, Luo Lin, Hanzo, Kahlua and Gitarakor. Group B Kurapika, Hisoka, Baudello and Lirio. The game is played 2 by 2 in sequence until the top one is determined. He is first in Group A, that is to say, his first opponent is gone, that super tough little carrot. At this time, the expressions of all the candidates changed when they looked at the diagrams on the whiteboard. In this group, only the one who wins to the end can become a hunter. Lirio couldn't help but ask. If this is the case, Lirio would like to say that there is no need to compare, although he is very unwilling, but in terms of strength, he knows very well that most of the people present are stronger than him. No. Netero smiled and shook his head and waved his hands, then looked at the crowd and said with a smile, "It is as long as you win one game, you can pass the test. The loser will advance, and the person who advances to the end will be eliminated." Hearing this, many people present looked relieved. Although it is a bit discouraged to say so, in fact, most of the people present still have a very correct understanding of their own strength. No one dares to say that he must be the strongest. Even for Hisoka and Il fans, although they are convinced that they are the strongest, the outcome of the real fight is still unknown. Wait, since this is the game rule, why is the grouping so unfair? Number 405 and number 294 have 5 chances. Suddenly, Baudeluo asked with a frown. Good question. Netero stroked his beard proudly. I decided this grouping based on the results of the previous tests. Those who perform better will get more opportunities. Could you please explain the scoring criteria in detail? Kahlua said with a frown. Kahlua was very unconvinced about his position. In terms of performance, he was actually just a level up from a guy like Badro. And there is so much difference between him and Gon. Ah, no. Netero pretended to be contemplative, then directly made a face and rejected Kahlua. Ha! Kahlua was taken aback by Netero's antics. The scoring standard is top secret and cannot be made public, Netero said with a serious face. But Netero changed the subject. I can't tell you the detailed scoring criteria, but I can probably tell you. Scoring standards are roughly divided into 3 major items, namely physical fitness, mental ability and impression points. Among them, physical fitness and mental ability are almost the same for all candidates to arrive here, so the third item of impression points is to determine the gap between you. The key to this. As for the impression score, to be more specific, the impression score is probably the qualification to become a hunter. Netero said to the candidates seriously. After listening to Netero's explanation, although the candidates present had different thoughts, they didn't say anything more. After all, they are just candidates in the final analysis, and they can't intervene in how the examiners come up with the questions. If everyone has no questions, then I will explain the specific rules of the final test. Netero stroked his beard and smiled. The rules of the final test are also simple. 2-2 battles, you can use any weapon, without any rules, as long as the opponent can admit defeat, the side wins, but if you kill your opponent in the competition, you will be eliminated immediately. At this time, the remaining candidates will pass unconditionally, and the hunter test will end immediately. Netero said solemnly. After hearing the rules, all the candidates present frowned. What rule is this? Let the opponent take the initiative to admit defeat. You can't kill yet. Once you kill, you will be eliminated directly. However, Netero did not give the candidates much time to think, and directly announced the start of the competition. The referee from the Hunter Association, who had been waiting for a long time, stepped forward and said loudly, "In the first round of the final test, Gon will face Luo Lin, please take your place." On the field, Luo Lin looked at Gon on the opposite side and sighed in his heart. Why did I meet the most troublesome opponent? Chapter 28. Field. Luo Lin looked at Gon on the opposite side and sighed inwardly. If I had known earlier, I might as well have fought Hisoka. It's not that Gon's strength is so strong, but it's too difficult for Gon to admit defeat. In the original plot, Gon was tortured for 3 hours in the match against Hanzo, and he didn't admit defeat. In terms of torturing people, Luo Lin never thought he could compare with Hanzo. Of course, if Luo Lin uses some low-level threats, it is not impossible for Luo Lin to make Gon admit defeat. But to threaten a 12-year-old child with those low-level threats, Luo Lin might as well just admit defeat. He can't afford to lose that person. Just take it as a favor to take the exam. Luo Lin sighed quietly. It was because of Gon's sudden attack in the last exam that he escaped from Hisoka so easily. Otherwise, even Luo Lin may not be able to predict what Hisoka will do after falling into that state. At this time, Gon looked at Luo Lin in front of him with a serious and excited expression. Whether it was on the airship after the second test, or when he confronted Hisoka in the fourth test, Gon saw it all. It can be said that Gon is definitely one of the people who knows Luo Lin's strength best. But that's why Gon is vaguely excited about the upcoming fight. However, I admit defeat. Luo Lin raised his hand and said directly. Gon was stunned for a moment, and then became anxious. How can this work? We haven't fought yet. Luo Lin looked at Gon and tilted his head. Then can you beat me? Can't fight. Although Gon wanted to say fight, he knew very well that he was not Luo Lin's opponent at all. Then you can't beat me, will you admit defeat? Luo Lin asked again. Absolutely not. Gon replied emphatically. That's it. You can't beat me, and you still don't admit defeat, so I might as well admit defeat. Don't waste time. Luo Lin spread his hands and said. But this is a competition. Shouldn't the winner be decided in an upright manner? Gon suddenly became anxious. He still wants to have a good fight with Luo Lin. You can't beat me in a dignified fight. You can't let me cooperate in a dignified fight, and you can't kill you with a heavy hand. You have to drag it until you are unconscious and don't let go, and then let me admit defeat. Luo Lin said let Gon have no ability to refute. But. Gon was at a loss for words. After all, according to his thinking, it seemed that it would really develop into this way in the end. But, this is not the victory Gon wants, and this kind of victory, Gon feels that he will not be happy at all. Looking at the entangled Gon, Luo Lin ignored him and said directly to the referee, Mr. Referee, just announce the result. Wait, I give up. Gon shouted hastily. If you win like this, I might as well. Before Gon could finish speaking, the referee announced the result directly and loudly. In the first match, Luo Lin surrendered and Gon won. The referee glanced at Gon after announcing the result. Is this the game you want to throw in the towel? When will they be the final test of the Hunter Society? Throw in the game. Joke. It's too late to admit defeat, so pass me obediently. After the referee announced, Luo Lin went straight down, while Gon stood on the field, looking like he still wanted to argue with the referee. Pity. The referee ignored Gon with a cold face, and directly announced the start of the next game loudly. As for Gon, but he was pulled back abruptly by Lirio. In the second match, Hisoka played against Kurapika. The outcome of this battle did not come as a surprise. Hisoka is very satisfied with the potential of Kurapika, a small apple, after a test that can't be called a battle. After whispering a few words about the brigade's information in Kurapika's ear, he directly chose to admit defeat. Compared to Gon, Kurapika is much less pretentious. Facing Hisoka's surrender and the brigade's intelligence, Kurapika accepted the victory without the slightest resistance. And then the third game. It was Luo Lin fighting against Hanzo. Luo Lin looked at Hanzo with satisfaction, looking at the hairstyle of a strong man. This is the opponent he should face. It's not like fighting with Gon's little radish head, it always feels like bullying a child. Contestant Hanzo, contestant Luo Lin, please go on stage and prepare for the match. The referee said to the two seriously. Hi, long time no see. Hanzo walked onto the field and greeted the referee with a smile. Referee, you followed me in the fourth test. Hanzo laughed and said, thank you for giving me a high score. Referee, you actually found out. Of course, all the candidates present should have discovered that kind of thing. Hanzo said with a face of course. Below the arena, Gon and Lirio looked embarrassed. The two of them were the only ones who didn't realize they were being followed. Let's stop here for reminiscing about the old days. Let's compete first. Luo Lin interrupted directly. Looking at Hanzo's appearance, that guy can chat for at least 10 minutes without interruption. The referee also reacted to Luo Lin's long passage, coughing twice in embarrassment. Fourth round, Luo Lin vs. Hanzo. Let's start, the referee announced directly. Started with a sound. Hanzo, who was still hanging around and chatting with the referee, looked serious, and moved a few steps sideways, changing from extremely quiet to rapid, and rushed over from Luo Lin's blind corner. However, it's too slow. Luo Lin's footsteps were slightly sideways, and his whole body was directly facing the rushing Hanzo, and then he slapped out with a palm, releasing terrifying power. Hanzo, who had taken the initiative to attack, was shot flying, and hit the wall of the hall heavily. Chapter 29. PFF. Hanzo spat out a mouthful of blood, with obvious astonishment on his face. How could it be so strong? Hanzo looked at Luo Lin on the field in disbelief, and at the same time analyzed his injuries in an instant. His right forearm was broken, and 2 chest ribs were broken. In an instant, he was defeated, and it is not an exaggeration to say that he was seriously injured. Hanzo couldn't believe it, and didn't want to believe it. You know, he has undergone strict training since he was a child, and he has persisted in the training that can be called hell for 18 years. However, after 18 years of training, what he got in exchange was the result of being killed in seconds. Hanzo couldn't accept it. However, Luo Lin will not stop because of Hanzo's shock at this time. The figure flickered, and Luo Lin instantly appeared beside Hanzo. Although it's a bit late to say now, I'm actually not very good at fighting. Luo Lin stood beside Hanzo, his right leg raised high and suddenly fell towards Hanzo's intact left hand. However, Luo Lin's attack was not very fast. Hanzo just endured his injuries and rolled sideways to dodge. Then, with a loud noise, the ground where Hanzo had just lay down was shattered, and hideous cracks appeared on the ground, even extending to the wall next to him. Seeing this scene, Han Zhang was numb. What do you mean you don't know how to fight? What else do you want? Luo Lin waved his hand to fan the splashed dust, and didn't care about Hanzo's dodge, and turned around again to look at Hanzo and continued. After all, I have hardly ever fought since I was a child, so I don't know where it hurts and it won't kill me, so. Next, I will only attack your limbs. If you have not conceded defeat after I smashed all your arms, legs and feet, I will concede defeat and carry on to the next match. I believe that with so many people, there will always be someone who will admit defeat. Luo Lin said very scary words with a calm face. Hanzo, Omega D Omega, can you listen to what you are saying? Your arms, legs and feet are all smashed. Brother, people will die. Hanzo shouted frantically in his heart. But seeing that Luo Lin didn't look like he was lying at all, Hanzo understood that the person in front of him was serious. He's really a rookie who hasn't fought, and he really thinks he's still alive after smashing his arms and legs on the field. I admit defeat. Hanzo only hesitated for a moment, and then chose to admit defeat. Although very unwilling, but if he bled to death on the field, it would really be the end of everything, and even if he didn't die, but his limbs were disabled, then it would be meaningless for him to pass the hunter test. Hearing Hanzo admit defeat, Luo Lin also showed a smile. Although he was very brave when he threatened Hanzo before, in fact, he was really not sure how to pass the level with this threat. After all, his next match is against Kahlua. If he dared to treat Kahlua in the way he told Hanzo, I'm afraid that in the next second, Ilmi's nails would be shot directly into his head. And the later Gitarakor was simply disguised by Il fans. Only against the opponent in the last game, he can use threats similar to Hanzo. But the problem is, the opponent in the last match might be either Bao de Luo or Lirio. For Lirio, who he has a good impression of, he obviously would not use such cruel methods. But Badro's words, just such a person, if the threat fails, Luo Lin will really miss the hunter license. At this time, Hanzo looked at the smiling and happy Luo Lin with resentment on his face, and said softly, if you break a limb with a real hammer, you will die. After speaking, Hanzo walked to the medical team prepared by the Hunter Association to treat the injury. After all, he has to compete next time. Off the court. Kurapika, if you hammer off a person's limbs, as long as the bleeding stops in time, they shouldn't die? Luo Lin asked with a puzzled expression. Kurapika was also a little silent looking at Luo Lin, and he naturally heard what Luo Lin Wei threatened Hanzo on the field. Is there a possibility that after you smashed Hanzo's limbs on the field, before here you admit defeat, the medical team couldn't step forward to stop his bleeding? Kurapika said speechlessly. Luo Lin. Yes, that's right. The game continues. Hisoka and Baudlo played in Game 4. The result of the battle is naturally needless to say. Definitely one-sided, not even a fight. It's just that Baudoluo is also a stubborn one. No matter how tortured by Hisoka, he will never let go and admit defeat. But, facing this kind of rotten apple with little potential, Hisoka will not show any mercy. Much like facing Kurapika, Hisoka whispered something into the disabled Baldro's ear. But the result is completely opposite. Extremely unwilling, Baudoluo chose to admit defeat. 5th round. Killua vs. Hanzo. If Hanzo hadn't been injured, Killua might have fought Hanzo again. But at this time, Hanzo lost one hand and broke 2 ribs, plus he lost so miserably to Luo Lin just now. Killua directly and proudly chose to admit defeat. Perhaps in his opinion, even if he loses to the last game in such a simple game, he can easily win it. But the current Killua has more or less a little anger in it. Before Netero said that this competition is sorted according to the qualifications of becoming a hunter, in a sense. This is to say that Killua, who has only 3 chances, is not as qualified as Gon, who has 5 chances. This made Killua how to bear it. After all, no matter how you look at it, Killua's strength far surpasses Gon's, and his talent. As the most talented child of the generation of the Zoldyck family, he thinks that his talent is not inferior to anyone else. The 5th game that followed. It was still because of Bayodello's previous serious injury, and Lirio didn't take advantage of this opportunity to win, so he took the initiative to choose to postpone the game. So in the 5th game, Killua played against Gitarakor, or rather, against ill fans. Looking at the ill fans who showed their true colors on the field, and Killua who fell into fear. Luo Lin quietly glanced at the happy Netero who was watching and laughing. Gitarakur's disguised identity could be hidden from others, but definitely not from this old man. He can guarantee it. This brotherly battle was definitely brought about by the bad-hearted old man Netero. Chapter 30. 5th match, Killua vs. Gitarakor, begin. On the field, the voice of the referee fell. Killua walked confidently towards Gitarakor with his hands in his pockets. And now, Gitarakor, who had barely spoken since the beginning, spoke. Long time no see, Killua. Killua looked at the nail man in front of him suspiciously. Has he seen this man? At this time, facing Killua's doubts, Gitarakor raised his hand and pulled out the nails stuck in his face one by one. Then, under the astonished eyes of everyone, Gitarakur's face was twisted and changed like plasticine. Soon, Gitarakor with thin cheeks and high cheekbones turned into a standard beauty, with a melon-shaped face and big eyes. Such an exquisite disguise technique. Off the court, the examiner Menchi was slightly surprised. Not only Menchi, but several other examiners were also shocked by the changes in Gitarakor. Different from the hunter candidates of the common people, each of them is a nen, and they can even be regarded as masters of the nen. But even so, none of them had discovered that Gitarakor was disguised before. This ability is very good. At this time, on the field, facing Gitarakor, Killua subconsciously took a step back, looked at Gitarakor in front of him. No, it should be said that ill fans shouted. Brother, big brother, Killua's big brother. Off the field, Gon, Lirio, and Kurapika were taken aback for a moment, thinking about what Killua told them about their family and the reason for leaving when they were in the trap tower, and their faces became tense. At this time, Luo Lin looked at Netero. Gitarakur's disguised identity could be hidden from others, but definitely not from this old man. He can guarantee it. This battle of brothers, Netero definitely contributed to it on purpose. As for the purpose, of course it is to have fun. This wicked old man, Luo Lin pouted. On the field. Killa, you stabbed your mother and second brother when you ran out. Yeermi stared blankly at Killua and said. Yeah. Killua nodded slightly with a nervous look on his face. Mom is crying, Yeermi said softly. She was really touched, saying that you have finally grown up, and she said she was very pleased. As soon as these words came out, the few normal people present were a little speechless. After all, whose mother would be moved because her son stabbed herself? But mom is still worried about you coming out by yourself, so she ordered me to follow you secretly. It just so happens that I will need a hunter license for my next job. I didn't expect you to want to be a hunter too. Yearmy stared at Kahlua and said. Facing the gaze of his elder brother, Kahlua lowered his head and whispered nervously, "No, I don't really want to be a hunter, I just want to try." Off the court, Kahlua. Gon looked worried at Killua's appearance at this moment. After all, since we met, Kahlua has always looked confident and never showed any timidity. That's it. Then I'm relieved. Yearmy seemed to have darkness surging in her pupils at this time, staring at Kahlua, and said in a blurred voice. You are not suitable to be a hunter, to be a killer is your vocation. You are a dark puppet without willfulness. You have no desires and desires. You come out at night and day. Your only happiness is killing people. You were brought up by Dad and me in this way. No, not right, Kahlua subconsciously retorted. Isn't it right there? Elmi tilted her head and asked. I don't really want to be hunter, but I also want things. Kahlua said nervously. You didn't. Year fans directly denied. Yes, I have, Kahlua yelled, as if it would take some courage. Looking at Kahlua who was yelling at him, Year fans still remained expressionless. What do you want? Tell me. Facing his elder brother's cold tone, Killua's courage that had just been mustered up suddenly drained, and he lowered his head and remained silent. Not at all. After all, how could a puppet want anything? Your only desire is to kill people, Yearmy said softly. But those words seemed to directly irritate Kahlua. That's not it, Kahlua yelled, then lowered his head and whispered with his hands clenched on his trousers, I want to be friends with Gon. I'm tired of killing people, I want to play with Gon like a common. The voice fell. Once again, ill fans simply and directly denied Kahlua. No, you can't have friends. For people, you can only judge whether you can kill them or not. This is the real you. You are just a fan of Gon's influence, you don't really want to be friends with him, you should have thought of killing him. Killua's pupils shrank suddenly, and Yearmy, who noticed this, chased after the victory, right. If you continue, you will only kill him, because killing is your nature. And just when ill fans kept educating Kahlua and instilling his set of ideas. Off the court, Gon, who had been patient all this time, finally couldn't take it anymore. Killa, Gon yelled straight away, striding forward. Gon, Kahlua subconsciously looked over. Gon player, please don't affect the test. The referee stepped forward subconsciously, trying to stop Gon. Stopped by the referee, Gon didn't go any further, but just showed a big smile to Kahlua. We've been friends for a long time, right? Gon. Kahlua was stunned, looking at Gon's smiling face. It seemed as if an invisible shackle had been broken deep in his heart. And the Year fan who had been paying attention to Kahlua felt a little cold, and looked directly at Gon with big blank eyes. Killa, is what he said true? You are already friends, Yearmy said softly. However, after hearing the voice, Kahlua, who had just reacted, trembled. Others may not be able to hear it, but Kahlua can hear it very clearly. At this time, ill fans already have the intention to kill. As for who the target of the killing intent is, it goes without saying. Kahlua didn't dare to make any sound at once. But, beside, Gon yelled directly. Of course we're friends. Gon's voice has not yet fallen. 3 streamers of light appeared in front of Gon in an instant, but then 3 shadows flashed directly, knocking the streamers into the air. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. A crisp sound sounded. In front of Gon, 3 nails fell to the floor with a crisp sound. That's a nail for ill fans. And beside the nail, there are 3 playing cards inserted into the floor. The one who uses playing cards as a weapon, the only one present is Hisoka. Ilmi looked sideways at Hisoka. At this time, Hisoka was shuffling the playing cards in his hand, and saw Year fans look over, and showed a bright smile to Year fans. Elmi fell silent. For Hisoka, he is an old acquaintance. Naturally understand Hisoka's character. There is no doubt that if he continues to shoot Gon now, Hisoka will definitely shoot him without hesitation. I just don't know the reason for Hisoka's move at that time. Is it to protect Gon, the favored little apple, or to take the opportunity to fight him more? At this time, Gon, and Lirio and Kurapika beside Gon didn't even react. Looking at the nails and playing cards on the ground, they suddenly realized that they seemed to be walked through the gate of hell. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.